You see the headline in the newspaper, Americans are not really concerned about, don't really care about campaign finance reform. You've seen those polls, and they're not riled up about it. So the anger isn't coming from below to pressure the candidates to do anything about reforming the system.
Look, in July of 2012, Gallup did their quad-annual poll. What is the most important issue that the next president should address? Number 2 on that list, second only to jobs, was, quote, corruption in Washington. Now, by corruption, people were not thinking of Rod Blagojevich or Randy Duke Cunningham, because those issues were nowhere in the press.
That's endemic in human nature.
That's right. They were thinking about the issue that was in their newspapers every single day. The consequences of Citizens United, like these super PACs spending unbelievable amounts of money, seeing the candidates, Republican candidates too, flinging themselves around the country to raise money to run their campaigns. And they're thinking this system is deeply corrupt. That was number 2. Now, no candidate, Obama or Romney, even mentioned the issue on their website. And I had a researcher look at this. I said, tell me the last time there was an issue that was on the top 10 of this list that neither party even mentioned. And he looked as far as he could find, and there was not ever a time that an issue on the top 10 list was not even mentioned by either party. So there's a wonderful, convenient reality of our political parties that they don't want to talk about this issue. They constantly say it's not an issue America cares about. But I think America doesn't care about it because they say, what's the use? Nobody's going to talk about it. Nobody's going to take it up. Nobody's going to do anything about it. I've got better things to worry about. So, of course, they don't care about it. They don't talk about it. And they also don't participate. They don't vote. They don't get involved because they rationally look at the system and say, the system is bought and I don't have the money.
You have been putting forward a great big idea that you think might make a significant difference in this and radically change the system. It's called the money bomb.
Right. The money bomb is a mechanism for creating the political power that we need to force this change. The change is not such a huge change relative to what other states, even what New York is thinking about right now, just changing the way you fund elections. But the money bomb is, let's figure out how much it would cost in the next 2 election cycles to win enough seats in the United States Congress to guarantee we get this change. I don't know what that number is, but we're hiring a group. If I calculate that number, let's say it's $500 million. So then let's go around to 50 billionaires and say to them, okay, we want you to promise in a Kickstarter-like way that if we find 49 other people to write a check for that number over 50, you will write a check for that same amount. So whether it's a $10 million check or a $50 million check, I don't know what the number is going to be, but commit to us that you do that. So that by the end of this, we've got a super PAC with the power to end all super PACs. It would be for the purpose of electing representatives and a president committed to, we'd identify the package of reform they've got to promise. So you go into a district and you say, okay, fine. If this congressperson is not committed to that, we're going to take that congressperson off. You're
going to punish him for not supporting reform.
Right. Now, of course, you had Jonathan Soros on your show, and Jonathan Soros gave us the pilot that demonstrated how powerful this idea could be. Soros ran a little super PAC called Friends of Democracy. They targeted 8 seats. They spent about $2.5 million, not a lot of money, and 7 of those 8 seats flipped in the way they wanted it to flip. They made money in politics the issue, and in 7 of those 8 seats, people came out and said, fine, that's right, this guy is corrupt in our view, and we're going to take him out. Now, if you, in 2014, went from 8 seats to 80 seats, and you won even 50 of those 80 seats on the basis of money in the politics. So if you had $50 million in 2014 and you won 50 of those seats, that would terrify the United States Congress. So when you came back in 2016, there would be a lot of people who would all of a sudden magically have become reformers in this fight, and we would have a real chance to get a Congress committed to, in 2017, their very first bill being the bill to enact the change that gives us a reason once again to have confidence in the system. Now, it's a huge fight. And the reason the money bomb has got to be so big is that the closer we get and the closer the K Street realizes that we might actually have a chance of winning, they're going to create all sorts of pushback. Because if we win, lobbyists don't go away. We need lobbyists. Lobbyists are an important part of our system. But the value of lobbying services gets cut in half, right? Because they are no longer the fundraiser lobbyist. They are just somebody, a policy wonk, giving a good idea about what they want. So, as John Edwards used to say when we used to quote John Edwards, there's all the difference in the
former
world.
John Edwards.
Yeah, there's all the difference in the world between a lawyer making an argument to a jury and a lawyer handing out $100 bills to the jurors. And our lobbying system doesn't understand that difference.
So the purpose of this pact to end all super PACs would be to go to 20 billionaires, ask them to give $20 to $40 million to put themselves out of business in a way by backing candidates who want to reform the system, including with public funding.
Yeah. Now, the kind of citizen funding I think we need is not the old kind where the government sort of writes a check, here's $50 million to run your campaign, but a kind where we empower citizens to exercise their choice about how to spend the money that they've gotten. Now, New York right now is considering, the governor is going to introduce a proposal for matching fund system to fund elections in New York, modeled on the New York City model, where if you give $100, it's matched 6 to 1. Really? My own version of the system would be basically hand out vouchers or coupons to every single voter, right? So if every single voter got a $50 voucher, you say the first $50 of your taxes we're going to send back in the form of a voucher. And you can give that voucher to any candidate who agrees to fund his or her campaign with vouchers only, plus maybe contributions of up to $100. Now that $50 alone would be $7 billion in the system. So that's real money. But the point is it would be real money coming from all of us, rather than from the tiniest fraction of the 1%. So it's like the voting system, where all of us have a vote, all of us would have a voucher, and we can begin to produce a Congress which is once again concerned not only to respond to a large number of us in the voting booth, but also to respond to a large number of us in the funding booth.
What percentage of Americans are contributing most of the money for the rest of us?
Well, if you look at the number of Americans who give the maximum amount to any congressional candidate, that number is in 2010, was at about 140,000 people. So that means 0.05% of America gives the maximum amount to any candidate. And of course, it's that kind of person that the Congress people are calling when they're sitting there with their headsets on dialing for dollars. So what I try to get people to recognize is how tiny that number is. And it turns out that's the same number of people who happen to be named Lester, right? So it's basically, we've created Lesterland, where Lesters are the people the Congress people call to fund their campaigns, and then they turn around to the rest of us and they try to get us to vote for them. But in the process of talking to the Lesters to fund their campaigns, the Lesters have their influence. And it changes the agenda and what's on the table for Congress to even consider long before we get to vote.
You're a good lawyer. What's the best argument against your reform?
Well, there's a lot of arguments about unintended consequences. I get that there are risks. But, the question isn't what's the risk-free thing we can do. The question is, what is the thing that minimizes the probability that we are going to face catastrophic consequences from failing to address the issues we all know we need to address? The tax code, the climate change, having a healthcare system that actually cures people, financial reform on Wall Street, which we have not really begun at all. I mean, these are all important issues that if we can't address, our nation is sunk. And so I understand we need to worry about what the consequences of this might be, but we also need to act vigorously to change a system which any rational soul has got to believe is corrupted.